afternoon. We're so glad that all 100 children taught them not robbery for join we one more again for zooming in on sustainability. This year, the Queen Quet head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. I so glad for day with 100 children one more again. Look, y'all believe this year? We don't get to the 24th episode of this year's show. Thank you to all 100 children what have view them right here live on the Wednesdays and things like that. But read us for all 100 children who to follow we at gullahgeechee.tv. Gullahgeechee.tv. So everything that 100 yeti we to crack we teeth about panya, you can go on back and watch them again and things like that. Take notes and things, pass them on, share them and all of that. Use them for all 100 groups and things where 100 want yet him over who we be done. Yeah. In the Gullah Geechee Nation, but rather us about how for do this thing it called sustainability. Now, before we get started today and thing like that, we want to do what we do every Wednesday. We want to pay homage to we ancestors. What been the one who had the mother with and thing like that for save this your land, for pass them down to all of we. Them what been the work in the field and thing like that for other rest of people. He ain't get not a thing for that, but hardship. But then when that day become, hey, they gone on yonder and take a little thing and a giant thing and get this your land for all of we, for still there. So from Jacksonville, North Carolina, to Jacksonville, Florida, all the way inland, the St. Johns River, let we give thanks to ancestors and give a moment of silence. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Well, 100 children, we're so glad that all 100 to join we. Every week we got more and more and more the Gullah Geechee family joining we right here for this year zooming in on sustainability. Now this year, I hope the room full up because look, we going to crack we teach some more about land and about wealth. But what I think got to do with this other rest of thing called the LLC. So if I make sure 100 children understand me and things like that, I am going to speak this way, because I want to make sure that all my viewers grasp fully what we are talking about here today. Now, you all know we've had several episodes already talking about equity, talking about justice, talking about land rights, human rights, and especially heirs property and Black land ownership. Well, as you know, if you don't know, definitely go follow gullahgeechee.tv, gullahgeechee.tv, and gullahgeechee-nation.com. All right, they say if you ain't know, you better ask somebody. You ain't got to ask me. I give you that one free. Go make sure that when you go ahead and go to those sites, gullahgeechee.tv and gullahgeechee-nation.com, you can type in heirs property. You can type in Black land ownership. And you will see that we have covered this topic numerous times in various ways. Recently, we had attorney Willie Hayward on, who is the attorney at the Heirs Property Law Center. And we talked about the history of heirs property. But one of the things we also talked about was holding on to your land. And proudly, I can say this year, we helped to save approximately 30 different properties from getting auctioned here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. And so those families now are getting educated more about how not to fall back into the trap of your land even ending up at auction, like how our ancestors were at auction and like our ancestors bought this land at auction. But one of the things that helps people to understand how to hold on to their land is giving them the tools to do it with. And many people think, well, oh, it's a liability because I got to pay tax. You pay taxes once a year on land throughout the Gullah Geechee Nation. Once a year, unless you have it on a payment plan and you pay quarterly, and then you are paying in advance of the year that the land taxes actually due. So thereby having more of an opportunity not to get caught in the trap of your land getting auctioned. But then some families have gone a little further. They have been able to communicate. That's the key thing, being able to communicate and get along with your family, at least while y'all handle business. So why did I bring up business? Because we got to get down to business today. A lot of you might have seen the LLC. All right, you may have seen LLC on checks people wrote to you or checks you had to write to folks, and you were doing some type of business with these people. So you figure this LLC is just a business term. It's actually for limited liability corporation. You may have heard us talk about the fact that your family can have one. Yes, they can, for your land. But we also want to talk about not just having land, dry lawn, sofa, had tree on them and squirrel and thing to run up and down and thing like that, but so that you have land as an asset. Many of you think because you pay taxes on it, it's a liability. It's one of the greatest assets you could ever have. Think about it. Why you think everybody keep trying to get it out your hands as Black families? Everybody else wants your land because they know it's an asset. They know that they're going to take it and then multiply what you can gain from it because they're going to invest in it. So let's talk about how you can invest collectively with your family. I brought someone here that has a last name many of you have heard, the name Bush, but ain't who you think it is. All right. These bushes grew right here on St. Helena Island and in Beaufort County and Bluffton, up yawning and Burton and thing like that, and Burton and Hurton Tongue and thing like that. We have these links, we have these connections, we have this family, the Bush family here. And I am so proud to have today attorney Clifford Bush III here with me. And he is the lead attorney, the proprietor of the Clifford Bush III law firm based in Beaufort, South Carolina. And he has been practicing law for quite some time now and has become a specialist in heirs property. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is how your family can start to look at land as the asset that it really is. And so although you hear that first L is limited, the only limitations are the ones you put on your own mind and your own spirit, because there's no limit to what we can do if we start to do these things together as the Black family globally, especially right here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. So welcome today. Cliff, how honored to do? What going on? We can't yet see Hona and thing like that. We're gonna have to take that get your video back. There we go. We are shining the light on him now. See, he ain't think he's slick. That little bit of time that I've been talking to y'all, he probably done took a client. That's probably what was really happening. He you know, I know who I'm dealing with right here. So peace, Cliff. How everything going?
Great. Good afternoon, Queen. I want to start by thanking you for inviting me into this forum on Zoom and thank the whole Gullah Geechee Nation out there for having me here today.
Well, thank you. We know you a native son, so we so glad for having you with the family.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So now tell me, I know you come from a large family, like I come from a large family. There's a lot of acres of property to deal with. And then you have to deal with all these other families that find their way eventually into your office to talk about heirs property. Okay. Now, over the years, we've even done some sessions together about heirs property. And I know one of the tools that you use is this limited liability corporation tool. Explain to us, what is a limited liability corporation? And is it something that you think is viable in relationship to families that have heirs property?
Yes. Limited liability company is one of the greatest tools anyone that has heirs property can have. And the reason why I was a part of the group that initially started converting family property into LLCs.
Okay.
And the reason why we did that was because we wanted people to look at land as a business, to start treating it like what it really is. You know, land is a great commodity if you're using it correctly. It becomes an asset. If you don't use it correctly, it's simply a liability.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we thought about was, when I started some 20 years ago, we would clear up property, heirs property, through quiet title actions, and you would still bring it out in a group's name. And so it takes us anywhere from 8 to 12 months to go through court and get it clear. And by the time we would finish, another family member would die without a will. And so we would have to then go back through the same process.
All over
What
again.
we came up with was this idea of, why not clear it and then put the property in a family LLC? And an LLC is simply a limited liability company. It basically provides the protection of a corporation, but the taxation of a partnership, of
Mm-hmm.
sole proprietor. And so what we decided to do was, if we put the property, once we cleared it up, into a limited liability company, you then didn't have to worry about other family members dying off who did not have wills.
Okay.
Okay, because it would stay in the company, and then we would treat it like a company. So what would happen is family members would be forced to get together and have meetings,
Right.
shareholders meetings annually, and
Mm-hmm.
they could discuss what they wanted to do with the property. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then as family members died off, you no longer had to worry about the problem of, did he or she have a will?
Okay.
Because their interest would belong to the LLC. And if there was something to be done with the property, the managing member of the LLC could continue to function.
Okay.
Now, what they would have to do is, if there was some type of transaction to be done with the property, it
Mm-hmm.
just required a simple majority vote.
Of the
Unlike there's
people who
property
act
where you have
board
to bring,
members. So it would be a
yes,
majority vote of the board members, right? Or
that
the
is
members
correct,
of
of
the
the
LLC.
members.
Okay,
And
got you.
simply every family member that owned an interest in the property
Mm-hmm.
was a member. So they
Got
had a voice, they had a vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me this. All right. So now you mentioned the wills, and you're mentioning now, well, this would protect the family members from losing property in the event that someone else died that did not have a will. But would you recommend still that individuals still need to have wills even if they form family LLCs?
Yes, I do. Because what the will does is it informs the world and the court, after you go through your probate process, as to how you want to distribute your assets. Without a will, it's distributed through what we call intestate in the state of South Carolina. And that's simply 50% to your spouse and 50% to your kids, if you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And then,
that's what the
and
lawyers, and if you have neither, then it goes up or it may go down, depending on how large your family is or how small your family is. But the
got
will definitely dictates who and when and how you want your property to be distributed upon your death.
Okay, so now we really talking now. Because a lot of us as black folk don't think we have an estate. Okay. If he like, I ain't got but that little house, and I got a trailer, and I got that car there, and I got a couple of rings and $2. So we think that's not an estate. But when somebody died, them folks want to fight over that same $2, that car, and that little trailer. And then you find out, and that person is the heir to this piece of property. And so that becomes a whole issue. So now, when we talk about having an individual will, that now lets you tell the court, this is who should get my stuff, even if it's just that, well, you think it's a little bit of stuff, right? But
That's
then,
correct.
right, but now that piece of property that you were an heir to, if you were already a member of this LLC, then the people that are still members of the LLC can handle that land issue if you
That
have
is
both.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Let me give you an example, and it has happened throughout the low country. Let's just say a person is a member of an LLC,
Mm-hmm.
and the LLC is about to sell the property for, like, hypothetically, let's say $2 million.
Okay.
Right before the sale, the person dies. So that
Mm,
person can't sign the deed to give their share over
right.
under just the standard LLC, just the standard heirs property issue.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a legal owner, and each legal owner must sign his or her rights over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in a situation like this, he or she would not be able to do that because they would be deceased.
Right.
Okay. And so if they hadn't probated the estate, what it may do is hold up their entire sale. So all the other family members would have to suffer, because that person had did
Had
not have
passed
a
on.
will, they hadn't gone through probate, and probate generally takes 12 months as well. So let's say the sale is ready to go now.
Mm-hmm.
Person dies, you have to petition the probate court. to get appointed as personal representative. Then you
Mhm.
have to identify all the heirs. And so that may take a while. So you'd have all the other family members or all the other members of the LLC on pause until your family got your personal issues together. Well, in an
Mhm.
LLC, the LLC would still move on because you would have voted in the minutes to sell the property.
I see.
So
Okay.
the LLC could go through and sell the property, and then your financial shares would be there to
Mhm.
be issued to your estate.
Right. And now that financial share would now be part of that probating process.
That is correct. And then that would be divvied up through probate as you have identified it in your will. That is
Okay,
correct.
I'm glad you went back there about the will. So if you are a member of an LLC, you need to identify some section of that will that addresses who now gets your interest in that LLC, or how would someone go about that?
It depends on the person's estate, how complicated their estate is. If you have a simple estate and all you really have is the property coming from the heirs property, then you can just designate it. I give all my real property to
X or
XYZ.
Y.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So now let's talk about a different scenario with an LLC. So that's a great scenario. Okay. This is a family who they just did it because they want to sell the thing off. Well, you know me. My thing is, why are you going to have fish for one day and then eat the whole fish sandwich? When you actually can get a boat and have a net and learn fishing and fish for now and teach generations to fish. So my thing is, let's teach generations how to create assets and build wealth. If we started ahead of the game, you didn't buy the property because y'all are heirs. You inherited the property. So now you got this property for, if you're fortunate, it has increased in value over the years. So now, if you're fortunate, you and your family members can get along long enough that you all have formed this LLC. You're having your regular meetings. You all are agreeing we are going to hold on to this for the next generation. But we need to generate income with it. I know various examples where families have LLCs and they lease the property, and then the lease money is paid to the LLC. So now, is that a model that you've worked with as well? With some of these families, have you talked to them about doing those types of business models so that they can still maintain the ownership, but they still are getting income so that it is an asset and it's a generational wealth building asset?
Yes, I have. I've done it on a number of occasions. But okay, so selling the land is, the extreme, but it's something that sometimes needs to happen in these situations, right? But let me give you another scenario. Okay. So let's say you have heirs property. You have 100 acres of land and you just want to cut the timber.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that happens
So
a lot.
this is a way where family members, typically you see them cut the timber and use the money to pay taxes,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
But here's the problem. If you cut the timber just as an heir, most people don't know other heirs can sue you if you don't have their consent to cut the timber,
Oh, that's interesting.
right? Because you have trespassed, you don't own, and this
The
is what
whole thing.
people
Hmm.
make a mistake about. They don't understand an heir's property, you only own an interest in it. You don't own the entire thing outright for yourself.
Right.
So what generally happens is, so if you had 100 acres and you decided, okay, we are, but you didn't have the consent of all of the heirs, going to cut the timber and we'll use the money to pay the taxes.
Hmm.
Well, you just cut timber off of an heir's property or their interest in the property without their consent.
Hmm.
Okay, which leads to
Hmm.
another lawsuit, and the penalties on that are kind of steep. And a lot of times, family members don't understand that. They think they're doing it for the
Wow.
betterment of the group, but it only benefited those who consented to it. Now, why would I say an LLC in that situation is the ideal thing to have? See, if an LLC cuts it, then you can only sue an LLC for what assets are in the LLC.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
And not that individual person's
and not that
assets.
individual family member who led the charge to cut the timber.
I see.
So that's the great thing about a family LLC. You are functioning as a limited liability company. So when you go out and you hire a timber company, you don't hire it on behalf of yourself. I wouldn't go out as an heir and hire it for Clifford Bush. The LLC would hire him or her. The LLC would pay the check to him or her, and the
Mm.
proceeds from the
The
timber
timber.
company would go back to the bank account for the LLC.
Right. Not in your pocket.
That is correct.
Right.
It first
Okay.
go through the LLC, and then it could be divvied up amongst the members
Right.
afterwards. And
Mm.
so, and for tax consequences, with an LLC, you can choose to pay taxes at the level of the LLC, or
Mhm.
after you div it out to the individual members, they can pay their own taxes on the funds.
Oh, so you have two options, because I
You
was
have
going to
two
get to
options.
that later on. Okay, because people who own limited liability corporations as individuals, you can pay taxes on your 1040
You
yourself.
can, you can.
So this is a similar situation. So let's say, for instance, you and I are in a family LLC. There's only 10 of us in it. And for some reason that year, let's say we had $10,000 worth of income, whether it was timber and we did a lease, and now there's $1,000 a piece that just came in. So you're saying we could either have a separate tax file just as LLC, or we each could just take our 1,000 and put down the 1040.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly
Okay.
what you could do.
Okay.
But
So then how?
as a
Go
family
ahead.
LLC, you would get, you could decide, and this is something I always tell folks: hire a lawyer, but you also need to hire a CPA. But
I was gonna say
here's
that.
what I say:
Right.
you could look at the write-offs and make a decision whether the write-offs are going to be better to write it off from the LLC versus writing it off from the individual.
On the individual. I got you.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, that's great to know, because I was going to bring that up too. That there needs to be not only these tools in the kit, but who going to help you handle the tools? And CPAs and lawyers are the ones you really need to get to know. And maybe your family might have them, but you don't necessarily want the one who's in the family to do it, because then y'all might think, oh, they know something we don't know, and they're going to take advantage of the rest of us. So you may still want to get outside parties that are CPAs and that are attorneys to help guide you through this process. So something else is, in the cases we're giving, where these decisions are being made, whether it's about leasing, whether it's about this timber, whether it's about how much we each get back out the kitty. Because if, like in my scenario, if we only brought in $10,000 and we all take 1,000 each, and there were 10 of us, we still got to pay the tax on this land.
That is correct.
So that money
That is,
got to come back anyway. So what is it? In the bylaws mostly is what you would recommend, that they could already put it in the bylaws, that if we're making income, so let's say it's only 50% of that income can be done in distributions to the members, or would you say, well, no, they could just vote on every single issue. Like, okay, this is the lease, we want it, or this is a sale, we want it, or this is the timber, we want this, or we don't want this. Which way do you generally advise, or use a mixture
I I
depending on the family?
advise them. Well, first, they're all going to have articles, but what I would do is I would always tell them to bring as many issues to the floor as possible when you're dealing with a family LLC. We have in the local, our families are scattered out as far as LA, as high as Seattle, and up to
Yeah.
Maine. So
Mhm.
when you have that many folks and you have the technology we have today, it's always better to bring it to the floor and let every family member vote. Even if they lose the vote, they'll understand what's going on. It
Right.
will cut down confusion in the long run.
Right. Right. I
You
agree
know,
with you.
I always, when I form them, I always tell the managing member of the LLC that it is your duty. You have a fiduciary duty to inform your family members of every activity that you are doing on their behalf, unless they write something different
Right.
in the articles. But I try to tell them that it would be much better to just bring everything to the floor, because if
Hey,
for some reason you are sued, you'll always have your minutes to substantiate that I had a majority vote that allowed me to do this.
right. So it's an
The further away,
process.
I always say to folks, and it's a way of bringing your families together. Our families are
Yes.
spreading out and we're not coming back together like we used to in the low country. This is
Mhm.
a great reason to have a family reunion. This is
Right.
a great, it's my model that we have to party with a purpose.
Right. Me too.
So this way we get in there and you have order and
Mhm.
formation and who's going to speak and how you're going to speak and
Mhm.
how your matters are going to be addressed. And if you can't get it resolved, you can always move for a motion to have it voted on.
Yeah.
And so that way it teaches us not only how to preserve our property and how to make a benefit, how to make profit from it, but it also teaches us how to conduct ourselves in a professional manner, in a business sense.
Right, right. So in that case, it ties back to what we discussed on the show previously about not only just talking to the elder members, but having all the members, because in this way, the younger people in the family are well aware of the issues with the property, the decisions being made, because they are going to be the next heirs, God willing. And like you're saying now, it gives an opportunity to build capacity, to teach, learn the children what to do. So they'll know how to behave in these types of arenas and how to deal with money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Over the
So,
years, I've sat through a number, even in my own personal family. We all, if you live in the low country, have heirs property issues.
mhm,
I've sat through a number of family discussions about heirs property for
mhm,
weekends, but we didn't leave there with a vote because we had
mhm,
no reason to.
mhm,
Okay. People may have left with a disagreement on what to
mhm.
do with the property or how to utilize the property, but we didn't have a vote to memorialize
Lies it.
what our next step was going to be. And so when we look at moving families into LLCs, I think it's one of the greatest things since sliced bread. We no
Excellent.
longer have to fight the heirs property issue. And then
Mhm.
you couldn't even get and see this is something else people don't realize. When you're walking around there and you just got heirs property, you can't control whom I decide to sell my interest to.
Right.
Okay,
That's
you
the
can't
key.
prevent me from doing that. Now, under the Clemente Pinckney Act, it's an issue about petitioning it for sale,
Right.
but you cannot control whom I decide to sell my shares to. That's
hmm
different.
Right.
And so when you're walking around with the heirs property issue, any day, at any time, any family member can decide, oh, I just don't want these shares anymore. I'm going to sell them to someone else.
hmm
Well, as if you create a family LLC, you never have to worry about that anymore because
hmm
the LLC has to transfer those
Those
shares
rights
or that interest in the property.
in that interest.
And
Right.
that takes a majority vote.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So that's
By
the
all the
beautiful
members,
thing
like you
about it.
said. That is beautiful because it gives voice to everyone. And like you said, if you have a secretary, you need to have a secretary. You need to be recording your minutes of these meetings. Don't just get together under the oak tree and then everybody later talking about, oh, but I thought you had said this, but no, I had said that. I had said this, and look, yeah, so and so, no, because I'm sure Attorney Bush will agree with me that, like people say, some of the worst witnesses is just a human being because people's memory is short, and so they go ahead and they don't remember. But when you have the evidence that's written and you bring those minutes in and say, well, no, on this day, this time we met, even if you taking notes like me, you take minutes like me, you have where we met and who was there in attendance, who voted in what way, for or against or abstained. You would have all those details, and then you have a case you can argue, and you have some physical evidence to present, whether it's 50 years from now. If there's any confusion about, well, how did we get this? Or how come they put this on the waterfront piece, but they ain't put nothing back here? You could go back in the family records of that LLC and review that. And even likely hear some of the vision that the people who started the LLC had for the next generation. Yeah. So
And
tell
you
me,
know,
yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off. I apologize,
No,
honey.
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, you know, and I guess most of the folks on this know from the low country. Sometimes you can't go in the room with your parents and hear them talk
That's
because that's
right
grown
now.
folks
That's
discussion,
grown folk business. That's right.
right?
That's right.
So, but I may inherit property through heirs property that my father or my mother or my grandparents were talking about for 10 or 15 years. I never was privy to the discussion. I was privy to going to the meeting, but I had to stay outside and play with the other kids.
Sure.
So now I may inherit property that I really don't know much about the previous discussions. And that starts a lot of the lawsuits here pertaining to heirs property.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do to prevent that is you will always have it if you form this LLC and you have your minutes, you can always show them in black and white.
Right, right. And I love that. As someone that runs an archive, you know me, I'm always reading. I'm always digging down into the records. I'm always looking at it. And y'all undepose me enough times that y'all make sure I bring my records in the room.
Yeah. And, and something else is, the other thing is, a lot of times with heirs property, it becomes a big debate about who paid the taxes.
Oh, yes, sir. Please touch on that.
So if you have that, if you have your minutes from the meetings, there's no question about who paid the taxes. It's
That's right.
going to be recorded in the minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That
You
either
know,
the LLC paid it, or Cliff paid it, or Queen Quet paid it, and how much it was, how they paid it. If I paid it, did y'all pay me back? All that
right,
should be in the minutes. So it shouldn't be
right.
no argument or no foolishness, because it's written down at the time that you discussing it. You're not going to doctor no minutes later. You're going to write that down then and keep it in a secure place. And so I definitely recommend, if your family allows you, to take a recording device in the meetings and record either audio or audio and video, and have written minutes in terms of typing them out or writing them in a notebook even. But you need to have those things secured. We live in a hurricane zone too, so it's good to have the stuff typed so you can also store it in the cloud or somewhere where you can keep it safe. But now tell me this is what I was going to ask you a little while ago when you proceeded with this discussion, was, if we're talking about doing these LLCs, how long? Like, people might say, well, my goodness, but how long it take to do an LLC? Is that going to take years too? If we want to
Uh,
form one, how long that
no,
take?
I can have a LLC up and going, and we can do it probably. In all honesty, you can probably do it in 24, but I say 48 hours because I like to give folks their federal tax ID,
Mm-hmm.
uh, their documents from the Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm.
I like to show them that the articles have been recorded,
Mm-hmm.
their operating agreements, and it's a formal package that you can probably have up and going in 48 hours. You can have your articles recorded with the Secretary of State. You can have your operating agreement, which is essentially your bylaws.
Yeah.
All of that produced within 48 hours.
Excellent, excellent. So now, if people wanted to get in touch with you, because obviously, if you know all this about it at your law firm, you must provide these services. I guess you provide services with doing wills and estate management tools like this with the LLC for the family and so on. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can call the law firm at 843-379-9500, or they can email me at cbush at lawofficeofcbush3.com. And I'd like to say this to all your listeners. If your church, if your church is a 501c3, now you must have that 501c3 certification from the IRS. We come out about twice a year. We will host a will seminar at your church, and we will not just talk about it and direct you back to the business. We will draft them on site for folks. Okay. But your church must have that 501c3 status. If you don't, what we've done in the past is ask you to couple up with another church that has the status, and we will go through that organization and come out and do it for you.
Excellent. So give out your phone number one more time so everybody can write it down, and definitely take it to the pastors for after when Rona going by the business and thing like that. And children still meet to the church. Then y'all could do them like that. Now, if your church meeting virtually, I'm sure, as you see, Attorney Bush can probably have some type of virtual meeting with you. But definitely, I know with a lot of this estate planning, it's good to be there face to face. So give out your number again so they know they can give it to the pastor and the trustee board and the deacons or whoever got to make the decision.
Yeah, my phone number is 843
Mhm.
379 9500.
All right. Y'all got that? 843-379-9500.
C. Bush at law office of cbush3.com. And the third is three lowercase i's because we
I was
can't
just
use
gonna
Roman
tell
numerals.
y'all. Yeah, don't use no three and RD. It mean them three little I's, okay? The Roman numeral 3 at the end of his name and so on. So definitely, I think it is a wonderful thing. that you have remained in our community and then offered these opportunities for estate planning to the community, because I know you all did a wonderful job here on St. Helena Island. What did you do? Something like 30 or 60 people estate planning in one day?
Yes, we worked until about 2 o'clock in the morning. But we do that all over the state. If your church has a 501c3 and we have the date, we are trying to eradicate this issue about heirs property throughout our community, and as well as people dying intestate. So if we have the date available, your church has a 501c3 status, please call us and we'll set it up on the schedule for you.
Definitely. And if at any point in time y'all say, well, Queen Quet, I ain't kept that number, or I lost them, or whatever, or you still want some more information, just email us at gullahgeechee-land-legacy-fund So again, gullahgeechee-land-legacy-fund Y'all can write. I know how y'all do. Y'all be like, the lawyer you had on there been a top of the business thing that we need to set up with the family, yeah, the LLC, right? So whatever, go ahead, email us, and that way we can always connect you to Attorney Bush. We're always connected. He and I have done a lot of work in the community. Don't have any intention of stopping doing that work in the community, but I especially applaud you because of the work that you continue to do, like you said, to eradicate the issues of heirs property and to help our people hold on to this asset, build more assets, and build more wealth. So before you leave today, because I know we just did this as a part one to really just talk about this specific tool with LLCs, and I know some people are starting them for themselves, for as individual business owners, as entrepreneurs. Is there any issue with someone having one for themselves as their own business and being a member of a family LLC?
No, I recommend them. They're almost like creating a bunch of subsidiaries that would sit under a corporation,
Mhm.
right? And so, remember the whole thing about LLCs is your liability protection. So if I'm functioning over here with my family LLC and we cut the timber, then a family member can't come and sue me individually, nor can they sue my other LLC over here that has nothing to do with the family LLC.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent. So, in terms of Black wealth in general, you got any words of wisdom to offer to the audience, just as Gullah Geechee folk, Black folk, especially in the midst of all of what folks dealing with nowadays? Because I know you've been in business a long time, like I have. Do you have any just words of wisdom in this regard for Black folks?
Sure. In this lifetime, you're either an asset to your community or a liability. Try hard to be the asset.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why I talking about right there. See, that's why I hang out with him. Y'all see, that's why I like to hang out with this fella right here. Y'all know that I always remind y'all that they called us Black Gold. Well, nobody called you gold if you are not already rich. We just have to recognize that we are the richness that we desire to have in the world. A lot of us who already have land, you have property, you out here looking at videos and stuff on TV trying to run after something that somebody else got a mortgage to pay for, when you actually could build up what you have without all that. You have everything you need inside. So go ahead, own yourself as an asset. Own yourself as an asset and act accordingly. So definitely, we appreciate you, Attorney Bush, for being an asset to our community. We pray that y'all gonna go ahead. Now look here, y'all go on that number now. Again, 843-379-9500. 843-379-9500. See, I don't know that one because I got a private number. I got the back line phone number. See, that how we do. You know that Queen got perks. So see, the number I know up my head ain't of this one. All right. Y'all can't get that number. Don't email me for that one either. But definitely I appreciate you so much for coming, and definitely, they say one of the tribe put the rag on the bush and thing like that. Well, he did. You know what that means. We can tell everybody else and things
Yes,
like that.
sir.
But I'm so glad that you had an opportunity to take a little time. I know you got some other clients and things, coming, but we hope you'll come back and do a part two and talk about some other aspects of things in terms of estate planning and wealth building that our community can do. But definitely, y'all heard, if your church has the 501c3 status, make that phone call. If you don't have that status, talk with the church that does, collaborate with that church, bring your two congregations together, call the number, and then have the Clifford Bush the third law firm come and do this asset building with you, all estate planning with you. Because once you have your estate planned, trust me, there's a lot of things that if you meditate and pray on it, God will give you the vision of how to use that to build more assets and to build more wealth for the future generation. Our ancestors left this to us, and they were thinking about us. That's on them old deeds from 1862, the last words, and their heirs. So if we are the heirs to this inheritance, let's act like we have something that we can hold on to and also pass an inheritance to the next generation. Scripture says that a wise man or woman leaves an inheritance to your children's children's children. So if someone left something to me, I want to leave something good to somebody else. So yeah, so any final words before we close out today?
One quick thing. Am I supposed to be answering these questions in the chat room?
Oh, you see some questions. I saw them popping them up. You can answer if you like. So if you want to go right ahead.
Okay, so LLCs end by winding them down. It's a legal process that we have to do and report it back to the Secretary of State.
Mhm.
So the time limit now, what will happen is if you open an LLC, even though your LLC may not be generating money like a family LLC, you have to make your reportings to the IRS of your taxes. You have to file the tax form. Even if you don't make any money, you got to send the documents in. That keeps your LLC active and going. Um,
Mhm.
but the way it ends technically is what we call a wind down or wind down, and that's when we have to, you know, distribute all the assets. Excuse me, distribute all the assets within the LLC and to verify that that has taken place. And then there's some legal documents we send up to the Secretary of State to tell them we've wind down that LLC.
Excellent. And someone asked me privately, can a trust hold an LLC or an LLC hold a trust? Is that possible?
It's possible. You'd have to have the wording set up right. A lot of people create, and I know my time is up, Queen. So,
No,
but
you good. Go right
I'm gonna
ahead.
make
The show
that the next
usually
question.
lasts
But
an hour. We just didn't
when
want to hold you up, and then we get a bill for your extra time. That's all we were trying to do. Go right ahead.
so when this is a mistake a lot of folks make with these trusts. They create a trust and then they don't put any assets in the trust.
Oh,
Okay, so a
mhm.
trust is only as good as the assets you put in it.
In it. Okay.
Right. But you know, a lot of folks go out there and say, "Oh, we have a family trust," but they never transfer the property into it. So the
I
trust has
see.
nothing.
Hmm. So now you say the trust has to have the property transferred in it. How does that happen with the LLC? Do you have to
Well,
transfer the property into it?
yes.
Hmm.
Yes. So then the trust could then transfer it over to the LLC. But it all depends on the scenario. You know, I would ask why would you be doing that and what would be the purpose? Okay.
For that,
Because a
right?
trust is essentially if you ask me between a trustee and an LLC, I'm always going to tell you take the liability coverage first.
Hmm. That's
Okay, there's no liability coverage on the trust now because the trustee has a fiduciary responsibility to act in a particular way. But if you're functioning within the scope of your duties within the LLC, you don't have any personal liability that someone could attack you for.
hmm hmm So that makes sense. So yeah, people are saying thank you. Yeah, she said that's just what she wanted to know, and we're getting a lot of cheers from folks. They're saying that this is much needed information. Folks are thanking you for your time. They're saying this is so informative, and that's exactly why I wanted you on here because I get to kind of run with a lot of attorneys for a lot of different reasons, and have learned a lot of law from all of you. And so I definitely wanted to be able to share it through this platform with so many people who are in need of this information. And I don't see any greater time than, as you said earlier, than to gather your family. People are having virtual family meetings every week now because they realize their mortality because of COVID. So if it did nothing else, that's one silver lining in the cloud of COVID is that it has caused many of us who were not so close to family members to want to get closer to them or appreciate them more, or at least talk to them now. And sometimes with people now meeting this way, they can have a better conversation, than they might have even had face to face, where everybody want to just party or hang out or whatever. But while they're on the screen, if they say, well, okay, well, Tuesday night meeting, what we going to talk about now is we heard about this, and y'all know we got that piece of heirs property that's 50 acres. So let's now start talking more about this LLC. And at that point, you all should definitely go ahead, play this show back. If you're using Zoom, this show will be on gullahgeechee.tv. Gullahgeechee.tv. You can subscribe there for free. So you'll be able to pull the link and then put it into the Zoom platform, and everybody could watch the show together. The difference is you're not going to have me or Attorney Bush there to ask the direct questions, but you can then send the emails, you can call the phone number and set up your appointment so that your family can then bring Attorney Bush in, and then he can start to step you all through the process, the procedure, what the fees are for it, and so on. And then you can start to know what is the best route for you to take. And if you all just heard that about the trust, if you know your family already has a trust, or you have a community or family land trust, we hear about those a lot, but then you can't trust the people with the trust, you got a problem. But you also just heard him. You're going to have a problem if there's legalities involved, because you have, as the trustees, fiduciary responsibilities for that trust. So did you put the assets in it, or you didn't put the assets in it? Now, if you think about the limited liability corporation for the family and for the land, then you get with him so he can step you through how do you transfer the assets in there, and then how you get all your articles of incorporation, your bylaws straight, who's going to manage it, and all that, your officers. Y'all know Black folks, we love association. I remember so-and-so association. I remember so-and-so association. But are you an active member? Are you participating in the voting? Are you participating in the management? Are you making sure that you're acting in accordance with your bylaws, which may say you should use Robert's Rules of Order, it may not. But whichever way you all decide, you need to be there and be an active part of this. And that's how we're going to make sure that this is not an issue in the next 100 years, that is still an heirs property liability issue. No, we want you to get these tools for the families now, so that the future generations can see that you left them assets if they're going to keep it, like he said, or even if someone, God forbid, y'all know I'm not for the selling, but if you did have to sell in some case, that at least what you sold for, that you all have some type of model that you're going to take those funds and not just buy cars with it, depreciating assets, but you're going to go ahead and invest that in a way that's going to generate even more in some type of businesses or family business together, if you can manage that, and also being debt free. Because a lot of times we don't think about that. We come into a windfall. Last thing you want to do is pay off all your bills. But that would be a blessing, because you will not be beholden to somebody else. You now have a clean slate and you can go forward and get done what you need to get done. So yeah, so we are so happy that you took even extra time with us. I was hoping we'd end up here for one of our hour-long discussions. So I'm glad that folks did start asking questions. And once again, give out your phone number one more time for those who didn't write it down the first time.
It's 843-379-9500. And I want to thank you all for having me, and I'll come back as many times as you all would like me to come back. Thank you all.
And then don't start sending no bill. I want that on the official record and in the minutes, that when you come back, ain't gonna be no bill charged to the Queen for you.
There won't be a bill, Queen. There will not be a bill.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yes, and I see you getting applause. Yes, I appreciate that. Roger's applauding. So definitely, this is a blessing. Y'all don't know how many hours he and I have spent on the phone just talking about various ways to help the community, not just about heirs property, but, supporting the institutions in our community. That's one of the purposes we are encouraging Black wealth building here, is so that whether you do an LLC or you have already some other corporate structure for your company, always give back. If that's the community that blessed you, bless that community. And I can attest to the fact that there hasn't been a time that, whether we were doing the Gullah Geechee Nation International Music and Movement Festival, or we were doing a Heritage Day celebration, or anything else like that, that was going to be a blessing to our community as a whole, that we went to Clifford Bush Law Firm and say, hey, would you make a contribution? That he just flat out say no. There's never been a time like that. Whether we were trying to just get sponsorships or other things, he was there to plant seeds back in the community that helped him to grow. And so he's a great example of being an asset to our community. And I am always reminding folks that when I was growing up, we used to hear the term, be a credit to your race. Be a credit to your race. And I say he's a credit to us, because the knowledge, what we send him school for and things like that, and bring them back home, Okay. Y'all know we like to say, what you send on to school for? Okay. So he go on school, he passed, he come back and brought back knowledge, wisdom, understanding that we can use to benefit the community. But part of that is we always talk about somebody else community got something we don't have, or they don't give we nothing. No, you got to work. The Bible say a man that don't work don't eat. We can't expect to live on this land and eat from this land without working on this land. In other words, you got to put in some work in the community. So even what he's talking about, he ain't gonna come do all your work for you. The family's still gonna have to work. Once he leave you with the LLC, you gonna have to put in the work for that to work. So we gotta always think about that, because we're good for trying to push something off on somebody, but no, it is a joint thing. You're gonna have to work, and you gotta work together. As the song said, work together, chillin'. Don't you get weary. Grit camp meeting in the promised land. And so it's a blessing to us today that y'all joined us for this camp meeting here on Zooming In on sustainability. Please continue to donate to our Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund with $ Gullah Geechee Nation, $ Gullah Geechee Nation. That's Cash App. Or you can go to GoFundMe and look up Gullah Geechee Land Legacy Fund. If you see the video with me, that is the right one. All right, so GoFundMe, the Gullah Geechee Land Legacy Fund. And this is part of the work that we continue to do to make these types of sessions available to the community without a cost. So, but there is always a cost. My teachers always taught us there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, meaning you might don't pay for lunch, but somebody done pay for that lunch, okay? So when I mentioned that fish sandwich earlier, somebody had to buy that bread and put that y'all like for seeing monies on them and things like that, and have to do them, and then have to fry up the foot. Somebody boat going out on, or somebody net going to cast for them. You ain't even have to do them, but somebody be doing them. All right. So that means we all have to contribute in some way. And God willing, when someone feeds into you, you feed back into them. And continue to follow us at gullahgeechee-nation.com, because we blog about these topics. We have information we provide there. We provide links. So we'll be updating the link where this show was announced, and you'll have the attorney's link there for his website to his office. You'll see it there. And continue to follow us on social media, Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook, and also at Gullah Geechee on Twitter and Instagram. One more again, Gullah is Gullah, Geechee, Geechee, and a no I in Geechee for the we. Okay. Now, so Gullah Geechee on Twitter, Instagram, gullahgeechee-nation.com, Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook. And if you want to look for me, it's queenquet.com, but you find them other rest of things, and you can find me, because you know who we be. We be Gullah Geechee anointed people. So thank you to all 100 children who joined with today. I so glad for this your day, and I could be glad when we do part 2 with Brother Bush and me right here, talking about some of the other tools for help 100 children hold upon your property and make them an asset, and rather us be an asset, as he said, be an asset. shine. Let that black gold shine. And we pray that all 100 children stay safe, stay healthy, be strong, and make we ancestors and things proud, yeah? Okay then. Peace and blessing, everybody.